Hello, team, and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War News Update for the 9th of July 2023. And for the third time, I'll try and get this intro right. Let's get to our usual starting point, which is the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply, of course. So we have 600 liquidated personnel. That's a pretty dehumanizing category label, but that's what it is. 600 liquidated personnel, say the Ukrainian general staff the day before. That's pretty much where we've seen it over the last couple of weeks. There have been the occasional spike. 4 tanks, 11 armored personnel vehicles. Again, not the biggest numbers, but still consistent attrition of the Russian forces. And then this is fairly significant, as it has been every single day, pretty much for 2 months. 20 artillery systems, 7 multiple launch rocket systems. That's a really big loss, 7. When you look at the average for MLRS over the war, we're at day 500, day 501, I think now. 668 means that there have been just over one of these lost per day. To lose 7 in a day is significantly higher. 20 artillery systems again is a big loss. Those tube artillery pieces being lost at this level every day at the moment is going to be a massive challenge for the Russians going forward. And of course, at some point there will be you would imagine there'll be a tipping point whereby it then becomes viable for the Ukrainians to actually do more frontal assaults with troops and equipment if the Russians are unable to support their troops in the trenches with defensive artillery usage. 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, at least one of them is a book. That is a type BUK type of air defense system. So again, the last few days or the last couple of months, really, the Russians have lost a significant number of anti-aircraft warfare systems. You can see there that it is less than 1 a day. So when they're losing 3, and I think this week we've had 6 lost in a day, that is significant for the Russians. And again, at some point there will be you might imagine there could be a moment where it is a tipping point, and the Ukrainians can then start attacking with support, possibly of helicopters and maybe fixed-wing aircraft. The close air support could be foreseeable if the Ukrainians were able to really damage the air defense system network. But the Russians do have a pretty decent air defense network. 19 drones, that'll be from the night before. 15, as in the night before last night, so 2 nights ago. 15 vehicles with fuel tanks and 9 pieces of special equipment. 9 pieces of special equipment is a massive number. They are definitely trying to target these reconnaissance, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance positions, video net camera setups, and so on and so forth, as well as electronic warfare points and equipment. So 9 pieces, where you can see the average is just over 1 a day. That is a really significant loss for the Russians in that category too. So it's fairly similar, but with spikes in certain categories that I think means that the Ukrainians are still in this attritional phase and doing a really good job of attriting the Russian capability. Now, just to kind of put some meat on the bones there in terms of what are these claims by the Ukrainians somewhat accurate, and I think they are. I'm not going to show you this video footage. This is captured Russian positions south of Bakhmut, so this has been the Klishchivka area. Probably the area is littered with killed Russian invaders, and that footage is just there are significant numbers of Russian dead. Some of the dead I've seen, and it's pretty horrific. Don't go searching for this kind of footage, but some of the footage appears to be of bodies that have been there for some time as well. And I've seen another claim, another tweet where the bodies were clearly from the winter, and they hadn't been cleared by the Russian forces. They hadn't cleared their own dead bodies, which I think tells you something as well. And the Ukrainians were finding pieces of paper or pictures in their pockets with telephone numbers, and they're phoning the Russian families themselves, who won't have heard from their son, husband, whatever, for 6 months maybe, and 7 months. And the Ukrainians are doing the job for the Russian forces there in communicating with them. Of course, that will sow discontent amongst the Russian families at home too. So it kind of has its own psyops advantages for the Ukrainians there. Just to kind of add on to that idea, Wagner Cemetery in Krasnodar, so this is particularly for your Wagner soldiers, at the end of December, there were 48 graves. On July the 8th, there were 824 graves. In other words, Wagner have lost significant numbers of troops, and that is indisputable given that their own graveyard is reflecting those numbers. Uh, uh, Here we have that book being taken out here in Zaporizhia front, giving its telltale sort of cook-off there. That's generally what a air defense system looks like when it explodes. It's where we've previously seen like claims of Ukrainian air defense systems being hit, and you think either the Lancet has not actually done significant damage or it's hit a decoy. And quite often, decoys, you'll have a small explosion and just a puff of smoke of where the drone itself is exploding, but nothing else. Whereas this is what it looks like if you've got a proper hit. Interestingly, you can see coming out of there probably the loader vehicle driving away just through the smoke. So yeah, there it is. But a second hit there, and this is almost certainly a HIMARS hit, and then something else blowing up. So actually, or unless that's another hit from a rocket, but I don't know, or missile. I don't know whether there are two pieces of kit hit in that area, or whether these are subsequent missiles that are trying to hit this, but this is scooted before the HIMARS could hit, saving their bacon. There it is. You can see what looks like airburst. These are probably the tungsten ball bearings that are inside some of the HIMARS missiles. You can see there are two missile hits there. The first one here has those tungsten balls. The second one has the tungsten balls. The third one doesn't, which could indicate that the third one is a piece of equipment being hit, or it's just doesn't have those tungsten ball bearings, or they are soaked up by. I don't think they're soaked up by the trees because they go off there. This next explosion, I don't know. I think that is possibly something exploding. But there you go. Anyway, just a bit of analysis of that hit there. Here we have something really significant exploding. So something apparently Russian exploding in a big way. And this is a sort of shockwave we see for some of the vehicle-borne IEDs, where they pack a vehicle full of stuff. This is on a road, I think, rather than a railway. I don't know. It looks, but anyway, there's something really significant exploding there. It's just a massive shockwave. Whew. So yeah, that's something going up, but I don't know what it is. Right. Here, again, I was wondering whether to put this in the frontline part, but no. After heavy losses at Klishchivka, south of Bakhmut, a Russian elite airborne brigade notorious for atrocities in Bucha was forced to make a chaotic retreat under fire, suffering more casualties, and more survivors were detained for refusing orders to immediately return to combat. Russian open source site CIT says, citing Russian reports. A powerful Ukrainian assault forced Russia's 83rd Airborne Assault Brigade to retreat on foot without an evacuation plan, only to be given illegally issued orders to go right back to the front. The Russian troops complained in a video appeal. Russian draftees in another unit at Klishchivka, the 1442 Regiment, also refused to fight after suffering heavy losses under Ukrainian fire while being sent into combat without ammunition, their relatives said in an appeal. Some of the refuseniks were reportedly being held in a pit. The Russian airborne troops said they were fraudulently sent to Klishchivka, where they spent 15 days under mortar fire without Russian artillery or air support or communications, which have been shut down by Ukrainian electronic warfare. Interesting. This is all nuggets you piece together here. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones reportedly zipped around freely overhead, unhindered by Russian electronic warfare. After refusing to fight, they said they were threatened with being forced to join the Storm Z unit of ex-convicts notorious for being deployed in Russia's virtually suicidal so-called meat assaults. Now, anecdotal, possibly. Caveats, yeah, but we are seeing a lot of these sort of reports coming from Russian sources, from the families or open source Russian sources, and you piece this together and think, while the Russians are putting up quite a stiff defense at the moment, you wonder how long term they can do that, how brittle it is. Are they taking significant losses? Yes. Are they in trouble with not being able to give close air support and artillery support, or at least enough of it? Yes. Are they having their comms jammed? Yes. How long can they do that for? Uh, so this is again interesting. I haven't seen this before, and I think it is the first video report of the Ukrainians using the TOS-1A. So in Sepyok, but it's a captured Russian bit of kit being used to take out. I don't know what target. Let's have a look. Quite possibly a tree line target. The thermobaric munitions. I don't know whether it, because this was, I think, captured some time ago. I've seen the details somewhere else. I forget now, but I think it was captured some time ago. And oh yeah, Balaklia, which is, that's a long time ago. If it's a failed assault of Balaklia, or it was during the Kharkiv counteroffensive. And if that's the case, then actually the Ukrainians have had this for months and months. Now, is it a case of not having the ammunition for it and waiting to get the ammo, or had they been using it but just without any video evidence of that? But anyway, that's the Ukrainians using against Russia what the Russians use against them. This reminds me as well, I showed you some footage of a T-90M being destroyed the other day, and I forgot to tell you the key point of me sharing that, because I shared it and said, oh, the reason I'm sharing this is because this is one of the Russians' best tanks, and it's been blown up, so that's significant, and they don't have all that many of these. But actually, I remembered subsequently, the reason I wanted to share you is because that tank was being used for indirect fire, a bit like artillery. So basically, what was significant about that tank being hit is the drone footage was showing this being used as artillery effectively, and I thought that was fairly significant. Why would they use one of their best tank in a way that artillery could be used? Does that show that they either don't have the artillery ammunition or don't have the artillery pieces in that particular area to be able to do that? So they're having to resort to tanks to do that job. So anyway, I thought I'd add that in now. This is a PT-91 Twardy, which is the Polish upgraded T tank, T family tank. So here, a Ukrainian's T-72EA PT-91 Twardy, along with an M113 APC destroyed by the Russian army in Zaporizhia. First confirmed loss of a PT-91. That's why I've added that in. We haven't seen all of the main battle tanks donated to Ukraine outside of the kind of Eastern European donated T family tanks. Although the PT-91 isn't like the Leopard 2 or the Challenger 2, these are still kind of upgraded, fairly decent tanks, and that's the first one that we've seen lost there. So yeah, as you would imagine, there's lots of activity along those front lines. Right, not too many. It's been a relatively quiet night for strikes on both sides. I'm sure, though, having said that, that the Ukrainians are not relenting in their HIMARS and Storm Shadow strikes. We just don't always hear about them. It depends whether Russians get to put up their video footage or Ukrainians in occupied territories to show hits. So here we have Vaznivata in Donetsk been hit, I think, for the second time recently. It's been hit this previous week, possibly at the railway station again. And then explosions in Melitopol, air defense reportedly also active there. On the flip side, over the past day, Russians have fired 47 shells at 15 settlements. That's actually not a huge amount, but they are doing damage in the Zaporizhia region. And damage being done to residential buildings. So the Ukrainians claim. Okay, moving on to other bits and pieces. Now, this has caused a lot of consternation amongst the Russians. This is a big bit of news. So Zelensky takes back 6 officers from the Azov regiment. So again, just look at the cinematography here. This is just, it's concentrating on the little things, right? Well, I've got goosebumps just from seeing those couple of opening frames there. what they're so good at doing, the Ukrainians, is filming Zelensky, making him look strong and powerful in ways that you probably wouldn't recognize, but is registering in your mind, right? So he's a small chap, Zelensky. So think about the angle of the camera here. It's going upwards, so you don't notice how small he is, but you notice his kind of strength, looking out to the distance, the panning round, a good quality camera work there, and then you get these guys coming off, and then you have the human interaction, the hugs. Now you can see the size difference there, but the human interaction going to slow mo there. These are Azov commanders that have been locked up for a long time. Although interesting that they all look really healthy. So that's although they have been in Turkey for some time now, they don't look like some of the really thin. Uh, POWs that we have seen, but this is really, I don't know, it's really powerful footage. This, okay, so I wonder what Russia thinks about this. Six of them being taken back with Zelensky from Turkey. So this says an awful lot about Turkey as well. And then on board the aeroplane, again, it's just a lot of happiness here, and a photo ops. The commander of the Azov Regiment, 36th Brigade of Marines, and a plane with the president. We have here, lest we forget, some 700 Avostal garrison members are still in Russian captivity. Sorry about that noise. I just paused for a second. Now, this is significant because of the kind of PR of Azov. Azov are very divisive in terms of like the Russians say that these are your Nazis, right? The Azov regiment. And although this has been kind of debunked over time, there is still that feeling within Russia. And they were the prisoners they really didn't want to let go of. But there's some deal that was done that meant that these prisoners went to Turkey uh, with the understanding that they wouldn't rejoin the fray. Well, now we've got Zelensky taking these prisoners back. Now, I hope that this doesn't then endanger or invalidate further prisoner exchanges from happening. That would be a shame. But Russia are really annoyed about this. So the Kremlin said that the Ankara violated the agreements by releasing the leaders of Azov to Ukraine. No one informed Russia, Kremlin spokesman Peskov said. And this has really infuriated Russia. And the fascinating thing about this isn't so much about those prisoners returning to Ukraine. Obviously, that's great for Ukraine, but it's about where Erdogan and Turkey are positioning themselves with regard to Russia. Like for the since Zelensky's been to Turkey and everything that happened in Turkey, it's been really clear that Turkey are siding more and more with the Ukrainian position, whilst also, as I said yesterday, taking money from Russia. And Russia can get as annoyed as I'm sure they are getting, but there's really not a lot they can do, given that they still need Russia to be able to launder money in Turkey. This is Erdogan, I'm sure, playing both sides, but knowing that he can get away with so much taking the Mickey, so much more of taking the Mickey out of Russia than he can out of Ukraine. Ukraine have a lot of powerful allies. Russia, on its own, without China, if you just look at it unilaterally, it is not of great concern to Turkey as long as they can keep taking that money in. And Russia aren't going to stop sending money through Turkey because they need to do that. So I think it's just a really interesting geopolitical situation, this. But we must also remember, of course, that there are 700 Azov-style, garrison members still in Russian captivity. So there's a big surrender there. And I still don't know the details of that because there was an idea that they were going to surrender so that they could have a prisoner exchange, but they still haven't been exchanged. And I don't know whether they were sold down the river, a lot of those Ukrainian fighters who fought so hard in Mariupol there. But what has happened with this prisoner exchange, or with these six chats being, rehomed, if you like, with Zelensky, is that this is a huge PR win for Zelensky and a really significant direction I think that Turkey are now taking. Very, very interesting. So Ukraine. Here, moving on to a slightly different topic here. This is the second time this has happened in as much as a week, I think. So Ukrainian Kib.org hackers hacked a closed conference of Russians where they were discussing the theft of Ukrainian children and their deportation to Moscow. Major Chornobayev Volnov couldn't pass by, so he interrupted their march. Popularly, this is quite evocative language being used here by a pro-Ukrainian source, explaining to the child thieves what is waiting for them. I will not translate what he said to those criminals, but it's 101% of what every Ukrainian and other civilized country's citizens would say. Soon with subtitles. Actually, I've seen the subtitles, but I mean, this is really, again, I don't know what effect this would have other than to make sure that any future meetings would have greater security. But I said that last time, it's still able to hack in. Here, I think every single person there will know now what Ukraine thinks about this. And the guy was saying, "We know who all of you are, every single one of you, and we'll be coming to get you," type thing. I mean, imagine if you are any one of those people on that Zoom call, on that Teams call, or whatever. You'd be thinking, "Oh, dang, this, yeah." But again, the Ukrainians are doing a good job of disrupting these meetings. Okay, Russia has inflicted $56 billion in environmental damage, and I'm sure that will rise hugely as more and more ramifications are felt. Russia's full-scale invasion has caused $56 billion in environmental damage, according to the Minister of Environmental Protection and Natural Resources. Just incredible damage being done to all aspects of Ukraine. Now, I love to have a right old dig at Twitter, but here is me not having a dig at Twitter, but a BBC investigation. And what's significant here, and this is, I think, worthy of note, is that, and I've said this before, people with blue ticks appear to be overwhelmingly. Now, yeah, you'll have Euromaidan Press wanting a blue tick, so they pay $8 a month for this so they can write longer tweets and have their voice amplified. But in the general public, when you see like randoms out there, there are overwhelmingly more pro-Russian voices with blue ticks because they are paying to get their voice amplified. So the algorithm overwhelmingly amplifies and supports those with blue ticks. So if you have a blue tick, if you pay $8 a month, you are thrown onto other people's threads and feeds, so on and so forth. And that the Russians are happy to pay for that because they're in an information war, whereas people like myself or individuals who happen to be pro-Ukrainian are, I'm not going to pay Elon Musk $8 an hour for that, so on and so forth. And what that does is it, and this is my complaint from before, is that it benefits disinformation. So disinformation is amplified more than truth, and we already know from research, and I shared some research with you that disinformation travels 5 times more quickly than fake news travels 5 times quicker than truth on the internet, Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth. So we have a real problem here, and the BBC have done a bit of an investigation where they have found that Twitter blue accounts fuel Ukraine war misinformation. Right, this is why I talk about this stuff. It really is important, and I know loads of free speech advocates say yeah, and give the comeback to that, but this isn't free speech. This is paying for disinformation. If free speech would be everyone gets to say what they like and everyone else can hear all of those things equally, right? That's not what's happening. We have a skewed platform that allows people who want to disinform other people to have greater it allows everyone to say this, but the reality is that those who pay for it are those who want disinformation to spread more often than not, right? So here we have, I think, 5 different myths that the BBC has debunked here after talking about how the blue tick is prevalent in this disinformation spreading. So weapons for Ukraine were not used in the French riots. This is what the Russian trolls are claiming. No evidence of baby factories in Ukraine. Russia has discovered baby factories. Apparently, children between the ages of 2 and 7 are said to be factory farmed and either sent to child sex brothels or have their organs harvested and sold by the West. I mean, there's absolutely no evidence. It is complete nonsense. The Kramatorsk missile was not Ukrainian. This has been claimed for pretty much every big Russian missile. The one in Dnipro was supposed to be Ukrainian. No, it wasn't. It was a Russian anti-ship missile. It's just false again. Zelensky has not cancelled elections, and so on and so forth. So just it's good that people are doing this work. This I think is an important article, and there should be more of this. Is pointing out the issues with some of the platforms, the issues with tackling disinformation, and some of those disinformation claims and debunking them out straight. Oliver Carroll here, who's a pretty decent source. If you're interested in truth in the real world, Twitter Blue simply isn't for you. Decisions made by Musk and that were either deliberate or moronic or both. Obviously, people can disagree. There are genuinely good people with Twitter Blue ticks. There are just more. Like I've spent enough time on this platform to know that there is a the greater prevalence of Russian disinformation accounts with Twitter Blue than just than your normal average. Right, moving on to frontline topics here. Ukraine continues its attack in the areas south of Bakhmut. On the heights next to Klishchivka, there is a fortified position which seemed to hold back the Ukrainian offensive for days. The obstacle is now likely defeated, and Ukraine should be soon in the village itself. Now, I said they were, I think, on the edge of the village. There's possibly, I have heard that the Russians hit Klishchivka surrounding area with aviation, and that could be why they've been set back a couple of days. So considerable aviation strikes on the heights around Klishchivka. Satellite images show that fighting in the area has been heavy, and reports of intense artillery fire are true. Some tree lines practically cease to exist. This is not the unusual in this war. Both sides often try to take advantage of the little natural cover there is. It goes on to say, in the big picture, a lot is happening in the Bakhmut area. In addition to Klishchivka, the Ukrainians have made gains towards Bakivka. They're also pushing in the immediate vicinity of western Bakhmut while simultaneously clearing the eastern side of the Donetsk-Donbass Canal. So things are happening around Bakhmut. And indeed, Andrew Perpetua says, Russians posted a video of fighting in Bakivka. The video depicts shelling, dead Ukrainians and Ukrainians who surrendered, who were captured. So that's obviously a shame, but that's going to happen in war. But it indicates that there is indeed advances for the Ukrainians in the Bakivka area. Ukraine it shows a portion of the town is heavily contested, so expect to see some movement on my mapping a bit later. And then he provides the evidence for that in the southern part of Bakivka. Every significant assault comes with casualties, and every defense works until it doesn't. Do we have any other news about Robotina except this? What is the news here? Well, the Ukrainian detachment swooped down on the junction of the defense of the regiments of the Russian armed forces and was able to break through to the advanced strongholds. Now the fighting is going on for the positions of the 7th Company of 71st Motorized Rifle Regiment of the Russian Army. So we've not really heard of any movement in Robotina or Robotina or however it's pronounced. Over the last couple of days, but it seems like there is heavy fighting going on there. And indeed, the latest thing I've seen this morning is Russian sources claim that the armed forces broke through the Russian defenses between the settlements of Robotina and Verbova. So along this line here, that would be very significant. The area is held, or most likely held, by the 71st Guards Motorized Rifle Regiment, who we just heard about. Depth of the breakthrough is currently difficult to estimate. It's not able to verify the information. The last information I had was an attempt by Ukrainians to bypass Robotina from the east and west, and that would be pretty sensible. You don't want to get involved in any kind of urban warfare, really, if you can avoid it. Not too much information about anywhere else, but I will do my research and get that Frontline video out next, just to give you a little soupçon of what is taking place. Right, military aid. 2 Ukrainian 155mm self-propelled guns hold the Bogdana. I talked about these previously, saying there was only one of these as a prototype that was made early last year. Well, now they're saying that 2 of these and then one older modification, that's probably the prototype, operating on the Bakhmut front. So they now have at least 3 of these operational. That's really, really good news. If they can start producing their own indigenous equipment and get that on the front line, and it has decent capabilities, then more stroke to the Ukrainians there. Right, moving on, we have Poland recently handed over a dozen Mi-24 combat helicopters to Ukraine, according to Wall Street Journal. What's important about this is these are helicopters we didn't know about. So it's interesting that the transfer of these helicopters by Poland was not previously disclosed. So suddenly another 12 helicopters they have. And again, as I say every day, when you hear about news like this, what are the Russians getting? Yes, the Russians have a lot of helicopters, so possibly it's not so important for them. But every time the Ukrainians are given something, the Russians are essentially not being given anything. Institute for the Study of War says the Wagner deal is unclear, that the mercenary forces retain their freedom. Status of the deal between the Russian dictator Putin and Wagner group leader is unclear, says the ISW. And indeed, if I was to then throw this in, so this is a bit of, I've actually got that first one out of place. So anyway, I'll carry it on now. This video has just come out, but it's unverified. It could be from anything, right? But there are claims that these are Wagner forces inside Belarus, presumably awaiting instructions on where they will be based. There's quite a lot of different equipment. There's military equipment. There's co-opted civilian equipment. There are radar stations, all sorts of stuff going on there. But what is going to happen to these guys, we just don't know. Okay, going back to Ukrainian stuff. So captured ammunition for a D-20 152 mil howitzer originally produced and supplied by Iran in 2023. This is really recently manufactured ammunition. Now, this is significant. Why? Because they are using the latest ammunition they can get hold of, which might indicate that their stockpiles have dwindled to the point that they are using brand new stuff that they're getting in from Iran. That's really significant for the Russians. It's also significant because now this is Ukrainian. So we haven't seen too much of this for some time. The last time we saw hauls of captured equipment was when they were last doing their offensives in sort of Kharkiv Oblast, particularly, and to an extent in Kherson. This is good because it's a zero-sum game. So every captured bit of Russian equipment is equipment they can't use, and it's now equipment that Ukraine can use. So that Russia's loss is Ukraine's gain. And here's a big haul of captured equipment near Piatychatki in Zaporizhia. And this is a really big haul of equipment as well. This is 2 minutes 20 of walking around, heaps of Russian equipment, and a real variety. We've got mines, we've got ATGMs, we've got small arms, we've got small arms ammunition, we've got larger ammunition, we've got all sorts going on here. This is a really significant haul. I won't show you all. I'll just forward wind it. Yeah, lots and lots of stuff there. So that's the kind of thing. Oops, I don't know why that's just happened. That's the kind of thing that will be really significant for the Ukrainians for sure. Right, just quickly on to some more to discussion. Will the M864 DPICM projectiles be effective against trenches? Asked Thomas Tyner. Of course. We all have seen videos of Ukrainian drones dropping grenades into Russian trenches, one grenade at a time. Soon, every Ukrainian M777 crew can drop 288 grenades per minute onto Russian trenches. Now, that is massively significant, of course. Now, these won't be the panacea that some people think they might be. They just will be useful for those reasons. For that reason that Thomas Tyner has mentioned there. This will be the sort of ammunition that will be particularly useful in the kind of attacks they are doing at the moment. Now, Ukraine bottom up says US is sending M864 cluster munitions, 155mm artillery shells to Ukraine, each having 72 grenades at a range of around 29 kilometers. If fired 7 to 10 kilometers from the Ukrainian front line, Ukraine can reach 100% of Russia's first line of trench fortifications and 78% of the second line of trench fortifications. That is huge, right? This is a really big. I think will it be a game changer? Don't know, but it is definitely significant for the Ukrainians. Uh, Unfortunately, certain nations, Germany's just come out, Austria came out yesterday against cluster munitions. Germany has as well. And Rishi Sunak, the UK Prime Minister, said that UK discourages use of cluster bombs in Ukraine. This is really disappointing. As Shashank Joshi from The Economist says, regardless of one's views on the merit of sending cluster munitions to Ukraine, I find this view discouraging. This view discouraging Ukrainian use to be hypocritical when the UK itself knows through exercises like Warfighter, these NATO exercises we do together with allies like the US, that it would rely on the US use of these in a war to break up big enemy formations. Source for my claim, a British officer reflecting on one of the warfighter exercises, writing in the British Army Review a few years ago. Quote, in repeated war games and exercises over several years, the UK division has called for support from US corps level fires to break up enemy force concentrations. The US has invariably delivered this effect via cluster munitions. This hypocrisy is reflected in the UK and many others' interpretation of the Cluster Munitions Convention. Yes, like most NATO, says Darren Oliver, another source he's referring to, like most NATO countries, the UK has published an interpretation of Article 21 in the treaty that allows it to call for strikes from a non-signatory partner. In other words, there is a great hypocrisy here by saying we really discourage the use of cluster munitions, so we're not going to use them, we're just going to ask our allies to use them instead. It's like, yeah, I'm really against robbing a shop. Right, I would never shoplift from my local One Stop there and nick all the bread from One Stop. I just won't do it. But my mate Jim, I'm going to pay him to do it. It's functionally the same thing. So this is, I think, really disingenuous. And like Shashank Joshi, I'm going to call out the UK on this. I'm going to call out Rishi Sunak. This is bad posturing from us, and I apologise on his behalf. So yes, like most NATO countries, the UK has published an interpretation on Article 20 on the treaty that allows it to call for strikes from a non-signatory partner, i.e. the US, provided that the choice of munitions was not within the UK's exclusive control. So we can use ones, you're not using nuclear missiles, but we are, he is going to use cluster munitions of this type, which is okay by us, type thing. I think to come out and then say we discourage the use is really problematic. Not happy with that. And as Thomas Tyner adds, establish international law. And I love the fact that he uses the term utter bollocks here. So the claim is Dr. Patricia M. Lewis here says, this is an unwise decision, the provision of cluster munitions. It means that the accusations and castigations of Russia's behaviour going against established international law will be undermined. Now, the established international law of Russia using these is the fact that they blanketed Kharkiv with cluster munitions. That's a civilian target hit with indiscriminate shelling of using cluster munitions to purposefully destroy the civilian spirit and will and kill civilians. That's the problem, not the use of cluster munitions per se, but how they're used. Now, Ukraine is very carefully set out how they're going to use them, and it won't be in that way. So that is a priori incorrect, right? Well, not a priori. That is just wrong. Now, what Thomas Tyner then adds is established international law is utter bollocks here, because the 10 most populous nations of the world, there are only 2 of them have signed the Cluster Munitions Convention. In other words, so that's Nigeria and Mexico in the top 10. In other words, all these other nations have not signed it. So actually, established international law is a little bit problematic as a term, because actually only some nations have signed this and the most populous nations haven't. So, a really good point there from Thomas Tyner. Anyway, we'll move on from cluster munitions, go on to geopolitical topics now. Germany will block Ukraine's hopes of immediate accession to NATO, reports the Sunday Telegraph this morning. To be honest, this was always likely to happen. I wouldn't put too much store in this, because I think that Ukraine are never going to join NATO. So I think what Germany are doing are kind of stating the obvious. and I think there are many nations who would be of the same thoughts here. So, as I've said before, they're not going to fully join NATO and then be able to invoke Article 5 and that cause NATO forces to be able to go into Ukraine and then the start of World War III. That's not going to happen. What you're going to be looking for is functionally, what does Ukraine want out of the Vilnius NATO summit? They aren't going to be able to get Article 5. They know that. What is the next best thing? It is going to be security assurances to the level that they are going to get continued and long-term support for their war effort in defending Ukraine from NATO and allies, right? Will they get that out of the summit? Almost certainly, yes. Some form of support which gives them the ability to join NATO as soon as that war is over, so that they can then subsequently invoke Article 5 after the end of this war. I think they'll get that, and therefore that's all that's important. I don't think you can expect anything else. Right, ahead of the NATO summit, says Anton LaGuardia, Jake Sullivan has said this. So some people slag off Jake Sullivan. Here is what he has from the US, from the White House position, what has, I think, been said. So this is quite a long thread. Allies have to spend more than 2% on GDP on defense, nothing unusual. Sweden membership bid may not be solved at the summit. That's because of Turkey getting all uppity about Sweden. China can be constructive in ending the Ukraine war. Ukraine will have a pathway towards NATO with additional steps. Allies will begin talks to negotiate Israel-style long-term security commitments. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Danger of nuclear escalation doesn't paralyze US, but threat is real. Putin has been weakened by the rebellion. Prigozhin is at liberty, location unknown. On Ukraine and NATO, allies will discuss Ukraine's pathway towards NATO membership. It will need to take additional steps with respect to reforms and interoperability, but it's in a positive direction of travel. Allies will, quote, negotiate specific security commitments relative to the long-term provision of military assistance, intelligence, and other forms of material support to ensure that Ukraine has a capacity to defend itself. That is exactly what I was just talking about, and that will happen. Allies will do so bilaterally, but accords will be embedded in a larger multilateral framework. Yes, it will not be just a piece of paper. Biden administration will work with Congress to get the resources to put behind the commitments. This is all, like, I think, spot on. On defense spending in NATO, process of reaching 2% of the GDP is incomplete, but the direction of travel is positive. NATO will not set new spending target, but we are going to have to go beyond 2% to meet all the security needs in the alliance, and give some NATO numbers there. And that's an interesting chart that I will probably look at in more depth. I'll leave that up there to give you a sense of the kind of spending from different countries. It's interesting to talk about Luxembourg. There's some people defending Luxembourg, saying it's a really rich country with a tiny army, so therefore it can't spend the 2% of GDP on the army. But other people say, yes, it can. It can spend. It might not have the army to spend it on, but you can do other things like intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, all of these kind of techs. Yes, it definitely can. That is absolute rubbish. Anyway, I'll leave that up while I read the rest. On the Ukraine war, the story of the counter-offensive is yet to be written. Ukraine has yet to commit a substantial portion of its force. US has promised to provide them with the ammunition they need to give them the wider window to succeed. On cluster munitions, decision to give them driven by lack of artillery. They are needed as a bridge between today and the future rise in production. When there are enough munitions, then we will go back to unitary rounds. On nuclear weapons, dismisses two caricatures of the nuclear dimension. One, that America is paralyzed by fear of escalation, and two, that there is no nuclear threat. It's a real threat. It's one we need to take seriously, though it changes with conditions on the battlefield. On Sweden's blocked membership bid, Hungary will not be the last to ratify accession. Confident Turkey will agree soon. I don't know that it will get done next week. It may not, but I do not think this is going to hang out there indefinitely. On Wagner's revolt, Prigozhin is at liberty as far as we know, but under what conditions is all a mystery to us. Putin has been weakened, but to what extent is unclear. No substantial impact on the battlefield. The Russian defense is organized. On China, Xi Jinping has been repeatedly surprised by Putin. China has an interest in ending the war. From our perspective, China could be constructive in actually stepping forward, standing up for the basic principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity. Really really interesting stuff there. Every one of those points is worth dwelling on. That's from Jake Sullivan. And then going on, kind of linked certainly to what we've been saying previously with regard to this is in response to those Azov regiment people coming back with Zelensky. Kremlin has cancelled the Putin's visit to Turkey that was planned for next month. This is massively significant. So Putin would have gone to Turkey, and that would have got Putin some kind of advantage. He would have eaten something out of Turkey, right? And Turkey would have placated him in some way. If that's not happening now, this is to the advantage of Ukraine. That's great. You know what Ukraine want to do is drive a wedge between Turkey and Russia. And that's exactly what's happened there. Brilliant. Anyway, that's my news. Sorry, it's yet another long one. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks for all of your support, and I'll get on with my Frontline update now. Take care.